Hi chess fans, welcome to Tactics Explained. We will look at 5 positions and you can find the best move in the position. And afterwards I will tell you what's the best move, but I will also help you along what could be a thinking process to find the best move. So in this position here, position number 1, black to move. Okay, one thing that comes to mind is that this poor black king does not have any squares. So if we could check this king somehow, we would win. One check that comes to mind is g5, but of course the pawn can take en passant. What else? There is a motive here that the queen can take and give a check, but of course this is not possible because the queen can take. So maybe from that we can think about somehow deflecting this queen. Maybe we can attack this queen so it has to move, and for example if it moved here we can give a mate. But the queen can simply take out, the queen can simply take out the bishop even with check, so that doesn't work either. So what other checks might we have? We have a check maybe here, but this gives white tempo time, and maybe white can use this to take a pawn here and create also an escape square for the king. So what else? If none of this works, what else could we do? Now let's imagine a little bit. Where would be other checks? We could imagine that this pawn is not here. If this pawn was not there, we could give a check like this. And so how could we get rid of this pawn? Is there anything that we can do around this? And as we ponder around this motive, maybe we realize, okay, I can give the check, and maybe we can just calculate the variation after the queen moves here. And gee, there's not so many moves that white actually has. This pawn cannot move forward. This pawn cannot move forward. Now this pawn is pinned, so it cannot move forward. The king does not have any squares, so the king cannot move. This pawn cannot move. And well, this knight can move actually. Well, this knight could take this pawn, and of course this queen can also move around. But this calculation has maybe, or this variation has maybe brought us to another idea. Very few pieces can actually move, and this seems to be an interesting other motive in this position. So again, in this position here, this piece cannot move, this piece cannot move. Here the knight is actually pinned. We have established that the king cannot move, and this pawn is blocked and cannot move. And guess what? Because of our motive with the mate here, the queen can also not move. So if we did any waiting move, what is the only piece that white could really move? It is this pawn, and this pawn can only do one step forward, and this actually opens up our other idea to mate here. Okay, so by looking for the checks and finding this other motive of stalemate, we can find the move, for example, king h7. And now everything is in a stalemate, and the only move that white has here, if not moving the queen and getting mated, is g4, and this allows us to mate the king. And so the motive here was really the king does not have any squares, and the motive of Zugzwang. Sorry, not stalemate, Zugzwang. Okay, let's have a look at the next position. Again, black to move. Okay, the motive here clearly seems that these pawns are marching, and if black can only transform one of these pawns, black will win. But if this pawn moves forward, it can be taken by the bishop. What happens if this pawn moves forward? Check. The king can move to e1, and now the king just stays here on this square. There's no way that black can chase the king away. And this bishop just moves back and forth like this. And this pawn can never move forward because it's blocked by the king, and this pawn can never move forward because it's blocked by the bishop. Okay, so pushing the pawns right away does not work. So what else can we do? The king could maybe do some little dance. But if the king moves away, the white king can always get close to the pawn. And if black defends, again, this white king now is effectively stopping this pawn, and this bishop is effectively stopping this pawn. So the only candidate move that comes to mind is for black to move forward. Okay, so now what is black actually threatening? For example, after bishop e5, black can now march the pawn, and if the bishop tries to stop this pawn, then the other pawn runs. And if the bishop even moves to a worse square, then we could maybe even queen this pawn already. So white has to do something, and white can play bishop g5 check here, and it's just a line that we have to calculate. But now we have the resource e3 check. It's the first candidate move that comes to mind. Bishop takes, and now the point is that once we calculate this line, it's almost a forcing move. The black king has not many squares to go to, but if we move the king to d3, we see that it controls the d4 square, and this is the only square that the bishop can go to block this pawn. Here the bishop cannot block the pawn. Okay, let's have a look at the next position. In this position, white to move. Okay, what are motives in this position? This rook is controlling this file, and there seems to be this mating motive here. And a lot of the black pieces are not really participating anywhere. If the rook gives a check here, the king can always move away. But there's one problem. If queen h7, the knight can take, and where do we go from there? So because of that, it's very natural to think about how could we eliminate this knight. And this is how we get to the candidate move rook takes. And black can only take with the king or with the queen. And we can already see if queen takes, bishop h7, king to h8 only move, bishop to g6. Now the bishop controls those two squares. King g8 and mate. So in this position here, after rook takes, the queen cannot take. So the only move really is king takes. And now how could we go from here? If you look at this position, there is probably only two candidate moves that come to mind first. One is maybe this check, and then the king can move up here. Okay, so we could look into this. And the other one is bishop g6, controlling this line so that we are now threatening mate. If you have a forcing move of two candidate moves, it's always good to calculate the forcing move first. And so you should start with queen h8 check. And now to calculate the line, it's always useful technique to think about, okay, if I do this move, black really only has one move, king to f7. And what is another forcing move here? One other forcing move is giving a check here, but then okay, the king can escape too many squares. What is another forcing move? Well, queen check runs into maybe g6, and the king can escape again. It is now protected on the dark squares. And there's another forcing move, bishop g6. And the only move that black now has is to either escape through here or to take the bishop. And we can see that if bishop takes, there's a mate. So we can eliminate king takes the bishop, which leaves again only move king to e6. And now another check. We control the white squares. The bishop controls the white squares. So it becomes clear that the queen cannot go in between, mate. So again, only move king moves to d7. And now we can give a check, and the only move is that the queen goes in between and mate. So how did we get to calculate such a long variation? One simple answer, to just calculate all forcing moves. And normally it's a good idea to look for motives and not go like into a crazy tree with all the possibilities. But if there's a situation where there's forcing moves, it's a technique that is very useful. Okay, again, let's move to the next position. Again, white to move, and there's already a little hint here in the position. Okay, white to move. Okay, so what's the situation here? This white pawn wants to march like this, and this black pawn wants to march like this. Okay, the kings are both close, but it's white to move. So if white wants to make any progress, he should attack this pawn. And this square is blocked by the pawn. So the two candidate moves that come to mind is approaching this pawn. And it's either king to e5 or king to e6. So let's have a look. Maybe king to e5 is the natural move because it protects the white pawn and at the same time attacks the pawn. So what can black do now? If black wants to protect this pawn, because this square here is blocked by the white pawn, black can only play c4. And now black is also attacking the white pawn while protecting his own pawn. And what can white do now to protect this pawn? Nothing, because this square is blocked by the black pawn. White has to move away and black will win the pawn. And so this leaves white with the only other candidate move, e6, attacking the pawn. The only way for black to protect the pawn is to get closer. And now the point is that white can move on the e5 square. And now we are in the reverse situation. Black can only step aside and white wins the pawn and the game. This is also a theoretical pawn ending. And basically the pawn ending goes whoever steps on either of these squares first loses, and the corresponding squares are c3 and e6, so whoever steps first on any of those squares wins. So the reason is that if I step first on the green square, black is forced to step on the red square, which allows me to step on the red square. So basically, as a rule of thumb, it's also a basic pawn ending where whoever reaches the green square first wins. So if you knew this elementary pawn ending, you would be already able to solve this position a bit quicker. But otherwise, it's again useful to just look at the candidate moves. Okay, last position in this video, white to move. Let's have a look. And I apologize, it's actually black to move. Let's have a look, black to move in this position. Okay, what's happening in this position? There is a tactical motive which is a mate with rook and bishop. This pawn is blocking the king's way, so if the rook could move here, black would give a mate if white could not take this rook. So this motive brings us immediately to the question, can we somehow deflect this rook? And one idea that comes to mind, can the queen just take it? But then we don't actually reach so much. Black is material down. And so another question and another way to deflect the rook is to say, okay, this rook is bound to the defense of this square, so can we overload it? This rook cannot perform any other function, and this brings us to the candidate move, queen takes c2. The rook would love to take this queen, but if it does, there is a mate here, which is nice because this candidate move is already good, because if nothing, we have won a pawn. But black is now also threatening rook d1. If, for example, white did some move like this, black can come in with the rook now, check, and the queen can take the rook's place. So there's actually very strong threat now after queen takes c2, and black really only has a few moves. One idea could be to move the king to the side to be able to move the queen in between, so that now after rook d1, rook takes is the only move, queen takes, only move queen to e2, queen to e1, but now black has the resource check and only move checkmate. So after king f1, it was a sequence of forced moves. Finding this candidate move is just piling up on the motive that we have seen before. So king f1 does not work. And what else can white do? White cannot take the queen. White cannot really give some checks. White could give a check here, but it would just lose the queen. White could take this bishop, but then of course black loses as well. And other than this, if the rook moves here to the side, this doesn't have anything. It's the same motive. So we come to the conclusion that white does not have any other resources, and black will win after this forced sequence. Okay, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you learned a lot for your practical game. If you like these type of videos, subscribe to the channel, and YouTube will send you an update once a new video comes out. Thanks a lot.